It's my nerd world. Welcome to it. Glad you're here. A Star Wars podcast. On the show this week, did Disney really make a lightsaber? Kinda. Like a real one. Sorta. We'll explain. The saga so far, the saga films, this is the story. It's not changing. I'll explain what I mean after another rewatch of The Rise of Skywalker this weekend. We have some Book of Boba Fett rumors to share, and of course your listener feedback. So, let us not waste any more time and get to a Star Wars podcast for this week. I'm so glad that you are with the show.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
It is a Star Wars podcast here on My Nerd World, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Thank you so much for checking out the show this week. Remember, you can always go to mynerdworld.net to find out about all things My Nerd World, art from the EMBARK Space Opera series, written by yours truly. All the details there. Book 5 is currently available. 6 is being written, and the audiobook for the Rocket Queen will be available, hopefully, in the next few weeks. So not a ton of news this week. It has been kind of slow. I do expect that we're going to be getting more information in the very near future, especially with May the 4th right around the corner. I'm anticipating, and I don't know what, but I'm anticipating that we'll be getting perhaps some further details on some of the live-action shows that have been announced. Perhaps some shows that haven't been announced that we get some reveals on. If you go back to one of those investor calls from the Bobs that Disney does every quarter or so, they did give like a number of sort of the number of shows that will be premiering on the Disney Plus streaming app, and it was larger than the number of shows that have been announced. And now that it seems as if we're coming out of this pandemic, and we'll be getting a better gauge on what will be happening within the cinemas as they open back up, and the streaming platforms, and more specifically Disney Plus, will have a better idea how their premiere access of paying $30 up front for first-run movies as they're released in the theaters work out. I think that we'll be getting some solid information as Disney solidifies its upcoming release schedule. And again, I think with May 4th coming up, we're probably poised to get some reveals, especially around the release of the Bad Batch. So, that being said, just a couple of things to talk about on the show this week before we dive into your listener feedback. As I mentioned at the start, we do have some rumors with regard to the Book of Boba Fett, which we'll be getting later on this year. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to share a quick thought that I had upon a rewatch of The Rise of Skywalker this weekend. I had some, my father and my stepmom were visiting, and they took a portion of the family, Logan, my oldest, and Melinda. They went up and traveled up to a cabin up north for a couple days. So I was here at home with my 14-year-old and watching the dog. All that is to say that I had some free time to myself with the TV and decided to watch The Rise of Skywalker, my current favorite Star Wars movie. And the fun thing was, neither here nor there, but I just figured I'd mention it. The fun thing was really kicking the volume up. I forgot, just, after listening to shows and movies at a certain level at home, I forgot just what a difference it makes when you really, in terms of the audio, when you really get the sound sort of equivalent to what you would hear inside of a movie theater. It added another level and dimension to this movie that I already love. I may or may not have mentioned this on the show last week. I don't think I did, but as another quick aside before I get to the point that I'm trying to make, we all sat down and watched Godzilla vs. Kong last week and tried to replicate that movie experience in-house. And it just didn't work. There were too many distractions, and so we're definitely going to be turning our A-list back on for AMC and going back to the movie theater as soon as these new releases end up coming out, even if they are movies that you could watch on the same day on, like, your HBO Max, streaming app. But this does relate to Star Wars in as much as that experience that you get watching a new Star Wars movie and that shared experience, it can't be replicated by watching these things at home. There's this fantastic documentary on Netflix called The Last Blockbuster, and it kind of half tells the story of Blockbuster and its sort of rise to power in the United States, and then its inevitable downfall, and also while telling the story of the last existing Blockbuster video in Bend, Oregon. And I was watching that when my father had returned from their few days up north, and we paused it at one point and we're just having a discussion about movies. And there is something very special about going to a movie theater and being locked in with not only strangers but also your friends and your family in this shared experience where you're forced to put all the distractions aside and just focus on this movie. And that's really important for Star Wars, in my opinion. And that's why it's really important in my view that we get these the major motion pictures in the theater. I love my streaming, but it just can't be replicated at home. And for fandoms to grow, I think it's really important, and to continue to thrive, I think it's really important that we do go to movie theaters and watch these films and not separated from home. Even if we never talk to the other individuals in the theater, we all know that we shared that experience, and the time that you spend in anticipation getting ready to go to the movies and driving in the car and sitting in the theater and waiting for the lights to go down and then leaving the theater and having those first thoughts. You can't pause it. You have to sit there and watch this piece of cinema, right, from beginning to end. And that's really, really important. And I think it's going to be very important for Star Wars moving forward as they continue to make these films. And I can't believe we have to wait, until 2023 before we get Rogue Squadron. So that being said, when I was sitting down at home watching The Rise of Skywalker, middle of the day with the lights turned off and the blinds closed, trying to replicate that movie-going experience with the volume up really loud, something clicked in my head, and that was, these are the stories and they're not going anywhere. I've talked about on the show, having heard Ken Knapsack of Force Center make this comment, that he views the Star Wars content as historical documents. This is just what happened. And when you do that, at least for him, it allows a level of enjoyment regardless of the content. And as I'm watching The Rise of Skywalker, that thought popped into my head, and it was a very sort of comforting thing. These stories aren't changing. They're not going to be retconned, right, beyond adding context to things that we've seen in the movie. The movies themselves are the story. This is what happened. I think the fandom gets so mired in woulda, coulda, shouldas that this point gets lost. We're not going to get, I can't imagine that we're going to get a world between worlds situation where you can go through these portals into a different point in time and thus have a potentially different outcome. We're not looking at Avengers Endgame and a timeline where we can split off into other fragmented timelines and retell stories. No, the Star Wars saga films, this is the story. And regardless of whether or not you don't like the fact that Palpatine came back, we had Chris Olivio last week on the show, or Olivo, which I may have been saying that wrong, who made a comment about how he had wished that there wasn't a return of Palpatine. And it had stuck with the storyline of the new characters, and I get that, and we talked about it at length last week. But again, I just find it very comforting and very pleasant that this is the story, and for me, it doesn't always go, it doesn't always go the way that you think.
This is not going to go the way you think.
You may not like the way the storyline plays out, but this is the story, and there's not going to be a restarting of the sequel trilogy. Anything that happens with the storytelling after the Rise of Skywalker will be directly connected to the events that took place in those films, just as those films are directly connected to the films that took place beforehand. And I guess from a real-world standpoint, the larger point I wanted to make is that apart from Terminator, in terms of IPs, of franchises, Terminator's the only one that I can really look at where they even attempted to restart the timeline. And even then, they've got a bit of an excuse in there because of the fact that you do have a messing with time, because there's time travel within those films. So, you have Terminator Dark Fate, which essentially comes right after Terminator 2, and there's an ignoring of the films afterwards. Your Terminator 3, your Salvation, your Terminator Genesis. But Terminator is one of the only franchises that I really see doing that. We do see some playing with that inside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the Loki story seems to be taking part in that with the Tesseract and what we saw of the Timekeepers in the recent Loki trailer that'll be on Disney Plus later this year. But when it comes to Star Wars, I cannot imagine that there will be any changing of the sequel trilogy, or like people have gone out there with their clickbait videos and talked about how they're ignoring the sequel trilogy, they're going to restart all over again. Nope. This is the story, and it's not going anywhere. And I think the fandom would be in such a better place if people were able to go and accept that. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but at least there should be a general acceptance that this is what the story is, regardless of your opinion on Reylo or, Rey Skywalker, her being a Palpatine. Nope, that's what happened, and it's not going anywhere. All right, one more quick point, and then we'll dive into some rumors. Earlier in the week, I actually sat down and watched A New Hope over about 2 days in the middle of the day after I wrapped up editing some audio for Book 5 in the EMBARK series and did some writing on Book 6. I for whatever reason, I was sitting there and I was on Disney Plus, and I just decided to put A New Hope on. And that really is, and I don't want to repeat myself. I know I've made these comments before on the show, but it relates to what I was just talking about of viewing the stories as historical documents, right? A New Hope, in my opinion, it really is its simplicity that enables the vast storytelling that's come since it was released. It is still such a fun movie to watch. And for a movie that even has a bit of 70s pacing to it, right? And I do believe that a big reason why The Mandalorian has been so popular, certainly Season 1, because I've been rewatching Season 2, and it moves at a much faster pace, in my opinion. But A New Hope doesn't drag. Like, the moment when I'm watching A New Hope, the moment a particular scene is about to go on too long, the editing process in it is just so spot on that it never allows me as a viewer to ever get bored with any particular moment of the film, because the moment where I'm about to perhaps sort of like, okay, this has gone on too long, we're on to the next scene. And the storytelling in that movie is so simple and great. And that has not been replicated, in my opinion, in any of the Star Wars movies. There is just something unique in its simplicity about A New Hope that makes it so special. And I think part of the reason is when the movie was released is that it did this, when George Lucas decided to do this thing with the crawl to lay the backstory and thrust us right into the middle of this world, we didn't have to deal with any of the exposition. It's there in a crawl and it's game on, let's go. And from there, the story just unfolds and it's clear. It is the furthest thing from being convoluted of any sort of cinematic storytelling that I can even think of. There is no story that lays out the clear objectives, lets you know who the characters are instantly. Just some of them, just the moment you see him, Darth Vader. The moment Darth Vader arrives on the screen, that's the bad guy. The moment that you meet Luke, he's the hero. The moment you meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, that he's the mentor. I mean, it really does speak to George Lucas doing his homework with reading and mirroring the stories that we've grown up with and learned about for generations upon generations in the writing of Joseph Campbell. But it's all of those things that makes just this amazing, almost perfect little film, little independent movie, because kind of what it was, that has grown into what we all know and love today. All right, let's go ahead and dive into some rumors this week.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
So Jordan Mason of Cinelinx, along with Kessel Run Transmissions, have been throwing out some rumors with regard to the Book of Boba Fett. Nothing earth-shattering. Jordan Mason has heard that Cobb Vanth, Greef Karga, Miggs Mayfield will all be in the Book of Boba Fett. Also, Jordan Mason hinted in an article this week that Din Djarin, right, from The Mandalorian, would be also in the Book of Boba Fett. And it isn't all that surprising. Kessel Run Transmissions apparently also presented some rumors that they'd heard the same thing. And without knowing, right, exactly what we're going to get from the Book of Boba Fett, I think the title alone does sort of lend itself to, oh, okay, if this is the Book of Boba Fett and this will be done sort of in chapters, you could have done the same thing and named The Mandalorian, the sort of the Book of the Mandalorian, based off the fact that they go in chapters. I think that what we're going to get here is sort of Boba Fett as the centerpiece, and then within this timeline, these other characters that we've been introduced to, interspersed within these stories, where some episodes may not even be directly about Boba Fett, but it's just part of the book of Boba Fett. And so that's cool. I'm down with it. We have to wait until next year until we get any more of The Mandalorian. And Kathleen Kennedy had even said during the big event last year about all of the upcoming shows that would be released in them and the movie announcements, that the Book of Boba Fett was the next. She said that there would be something at the end of the year that would be the next chapter of The Mandalorian, and so clearly she was speaking about the Book of Boba Fett, so it makes sense that these characters, Cobb Vanth, Greef Karga, and even the Mandalorian Din Djarin himself would end up being in this show. So I'm excited. I'm just excited for the fact that we do get some Star Wars live-action content this year. It's a bummer we got to wait until December until we get it. But it's clear Disney Plus is, and Disney is focusing on Marvel and setting the stage for the Marvel cinematic universe and the Marvel live-action universe, and releasing all of the shows that they've been releasing this year with Loki and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision. The big question that within both fandoms that people keep asking is, okay, well, what is going to be the end result of when are we going to see all of these shows on top of each other? Because right now it's very segmented. We will get the Bad Batch, which will be in between. I think it ends up falling in between The Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki, but at some point we're going to have an overlap of a Marvel show being released on a Marvel episode being released on the same week as a Star Wars show. And I think the fandom's ready for that. I'll watch both. I think Disney's smart in parsing it out right now, but no, man, bring me all the content. Just make sure that I get my movies. All right. This one's kind of fun. This article dropped earlier in the week. Disney held a virtual news conference on Thursday to talk about the future experiences in its theme parks. But a big jaw-dropping moment came at the end of the presentation. Disney Parks chairman Josh D'Amaro hosted the presentation and touched on topics such as the reopening of the Disneyland Resort in California, upcoming Disney World attractions, and how new technology will shape guest experiences. He was there with the Marvel studio chief Kevin Feige, revealing the opening date for the Avengers Campus, the Marvel-themed land coming to Disney's California Adventure. But in the closing remarks, Josh D'Amaro lifted up a lightsaber, turned it on, and said it's real before the video ended. The way the light activated from the hilt was similar to how lightsabers activate in the Star Wars films, according to the article. You never know what we're going to come up with next, D'Amaro said. No other details have been announced, and the video was not released. In a blog post released after the presentation, D'Amaro briefly mentioned that the Walt Disney Imagineering Research and Development team and the work that they were doing. And he says, I can't wait to share more with you in the near future. His team is really pushing the boundaries of creativity, technology, and storytelling. The tease does bring up a few questions. How real is the lightsaber? Will the lightsaber be made to the public? Will it be offered as part of the lightsaber training experience at Disney's upcoming Star Wars Hotel Galactic Star Cruiser in Florida? Disney has filed patents in the past for lightsaber-related technology, and visitors to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge can build their own lightsabers at Savvy's workshop. Those lightsabers feature a heavier hilt made out of metal. So I've seen, I've got a couple of the lightsabers myself, and the ones where, it obviously has the plastic tube attached, you turn it on, and it lights up from top to bottom. I have seen some blueprints for the patents that Disney and the Disney Imagineers have been working on. And essentially, what it looks like is a mechanism that when you turn it on, it allows the material that glows to roll out to a rigid length rather quickly while it ignites. And the blueprints itself shows a little reel, right? And basically you click it and then it would pop up and it would become a rigid band, right? And then it would light up as it went. So obviously something that would look a lot better in darkness than it would in the light. Probably a long way from creating one that you could fight with. You know how your phone will tailor your ads accordingly based off your searches and stuff like this? On Instagram, I'm constantly getting, because I just love looking at them, I'm constantly getting the ads for the lightsabers and the non-Disney licensed ones, right? And one of these days I'll get them, but I really like those lightsabers that, again, they're not licensed to Disney, but they can get away with it. They give them different names. The hilts look eerily similar to the ones that you would officially get from licensed, manufacturers. But they make the ones that you can actually go and battle with. And there's whole groups where they go and train. Those are awesome. So I think when it comes to this new reel, doing that thing with my fingers lightsaber, they're probably going to be a long way off before they create something that can actually have a mechanism like that where the band, whatever they're using for the band of light for the actual blade, would be rigid enough to where you can go and fight with. But look, make no mistake, they make something like that available to the market, and it's looks screen accurate. I'm down with it. One of the original, I have the Anakin Skywalker lightsaber. My mom got it for me. This would have been after that came out, one of the Force Effects ones that came out after Attack of the Clones. And love it, but the hilt is, it was, when they were being first manufactured, the hilts were too big to get all the mechanics in it. Now they've been able to pare down the guts of the hilt itself and the mechanisms. They've been able to pare them down to where the hilts are actually down movie accurate. So I have the Anakin Skywalker one that ended up getting destroyed, right, during the droid factory scene at the end of the movie. And then I also have the Legacy Saber, and that's the one that has the removable blade on it, which I think is rad and lights up from top to bottom. So I'm sure we'll be seeing this sometime in the near future. I'm just looking forward to hopefully being able to go back to Disneyland, because I still have not been to Galaxy's Edge. Despite what you might have read in EMBARK Book 5, The Rocket Queen, no, I had to look at maps. For those that have the book or seen the cover, you know what it is I'm talking about. All right, let's dive into some listener feedback this week.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, the first piece of listener feedback comes from Ishan Valdia, and they write this: I live in India, and the Star Wars Vintage Collection on Disney Plus has not been released yet here. I was really excited and looking forward to it to come out, and was really disappointed that it didn't. Yeah, I am. Disney's rollout, I don't understand. I know that the rollout of the Disney Plus app has been different in other countries. I have no idea the specifics as to why. I just know that happens to be the case. So hopefully for you will be getting the Vintage Collection very soon. Again, can't say enough good things about that Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars 2 seasons. Just absolutely love that. All right, friend of the show Ben Fisher writes this: I was a little disappointed that I didn't see Liam Neeson on the list for the Obi-Wan casting. Not to say that he couldn't still join the cast. I was just hoping to see some Force Ghost Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, I would guess that would be something that they would save as a reveal, that they wouldn't want to spoil up front. Speaking of Qui-Gon in the discussion of the Chosen One prophecy, I've always looked at that as just a prophecy. I hope Star Wars never explicitly states who the Chosen One is. It should just remain a prophecy. Qui-Gon studied the holocron of the prophecies, which I believe was forbidden to do. This is why Qui-Gon was in such belief that Anakin was the Chosen One, and no other Jedi really believed it, because they did not believe in the prophecies. Obi-Wan believed it because Qui-Gon told him he was the Chosen One. I think it is a great prophecy for the fans to speculate over and debate over, but like I already said, I hope Disney / Lucasfilm / Disney never truly says who it is. You asked what people are watching right now. Honestly, nothing Star Wars. Not really on purpose, just been really busy personally. If I did have more time, I would like to watch some of the older stuff that just got released. Other than that, I just want new content. I like watching older stuff, but I prefer new content. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm worried that we're going to get flooded with new content next year and that we're going to get spoiled. End of 2021, we get the Book of Boba Fett, which should lead into the spring of 2021. Didn't they say the spring of 2022 we would get Season 3 of Mando? And we are also supposed to be getting Obi-Wan in the spring. Maybe my timeline is off, but if all of that comes in 2022 around the same time, it will be Star Wars overload, and I will love it. I have your new book. I just haven't had time to read it. I have read all 4 and hope to start the 5th this weekend. Keep up the good work, Ben Fisher. Thank you, Ben. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, so this year we get Bad Batch. We get The Visions, which is the animated style storytelling. And then we get the Book of Boba Fett. My understanding is next year we're supposed to get Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Andor, and The Mandalorian. My expectation next year is that next year is going to roll out much in the same way that Disney Plus has done with the Marvel shows. So WandaVision, The Falcon, the Winter Soldier, and Loki. And then I don't know if we get anything else by the end of the year when it comes to Marvel. So I think next year is very much going to be the same way. The good thing about the streaming part of it is that you don't run into the problems of releasing them in the theaters, right? Because people can watch them on their own time. I'm with you. It's going to be a lot. But there'll be a ton to talk about on the podcast, which makes me really happy. And I'm absolutely all here for it. So thank you, Ben, for the email. All right, friend of the show, Brian Martin, asks this. How old is that knife owned by Uchi in The Rise of Skywalker? Or Ochi of Bastoon. It couldn't have been more than 30 years old, right? Otherwise, how could the outline match the chunk of the Death Star 2's wreckage perfectly? So, the blade of Ochi of Bastoon, or simply Ochi's blade, was a knife owned by the Sith cultist and assassin, Ochi of Bastoon. He was a relic hunter. He used this melee weapon to kill many, including the Force-sensitive Rey's father and mother. As a result of such deeds of murder, the Sith dagger resonated in the Force, and the evil imbued within, thus shocking Rey upon the human Jedi aspirant's touch. The blade itself was capable of withstanding lightsaber blows, making it a formidable weapon. Additionally, it was inscribed in runes in the Sith language, which recorded coordinates leading to the location of the Wayfinder belonging to Darth Sidious. C-3PO had his systems altered to decipher the inscription, having been prevented from translating the forbidden language by a programming block. So, Rey was 19 in The Force Awakens. She was born 15 years after the Battle of Yavin, and so you got about a 30-year time period. I couldn't find any specific details on how old the blade was, apart from what I just mentioned. I think the key here is that the blade could have been older than 30 years old, but was only inscribed with the location of the Wayfinder after, of course, the Battle of Yavin from Return of the Jedi. So, unless it's been detailed somewhere else, my understanding is Ochi of Bastoon was working, obviously, on behalf of Darth Sidious and the remnants of the Empire and the Sith cultists, right, on Exegol, and was tasked with going and finding the wreckage where the Wayfinder was, and then using that particular dagger as a means to offer as a clue. The dagger could have been around a lot longer, but the inscription was clearly made much later, or at least after, right, the battle over Yavin. All right, and lastly, just to clarify from last week, talked quite a bit about some comments from SheVP. Wasn't sure if SheVP was a man or a woman, to which they write, "Yep, I'm a chick, John, LOL. I hope you and your family have a blessed Easter." We did. We had a great Easter. Thank you so much, SheVP. Wasn't 100% sure, but now I know. And that wraps up the show this week. Again, thank you so much for checking out a Star Wars podcast here on My Nerd World. I really do appreciate it. If you want to support the show, you can do that by supporting my being an author and picking up your preferred copy of my EMBARK science fiction space opera series. Written for adults, but good for all ages. Books 1, 2, 3, and 4 are available. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are available right now on Amazon.com. Search for Jon, Jon Justice, and EMBARK. Ebook, paperback, and audiobook, except for book 5, The Rocket Queen, which kicks off a brand new trilogy. Still working on that audiobook. Hope to have it out sometime by the end of this month or early May. It's just taking me a long time to edit the audio down. But yeah, go pick yourself up the ebook, the paperback, or the audiobook for the EMBARK Science Fiction Space Opera series. And that's how you can go and support the show. MyNerdWorld.net or Amazon.com, Jon, Jon Justice. You can also find me, of course, at MyNerdWorld.net and on Twitter at the MyNerdWorld or at Jon Justice. Instagram, The Jon Justice, and Facebook, Jon Jon Justice, and My Nerd World. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com is the email address. Thank you so much, once again, for checking out the show, and we'll be back again next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.